presentation, a little bit of a background of what's going on today. This is our Access to Love patient picnic, and we are starting to head into a legislative session with the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. In the next, I would say, 4 to 6 months, we are going to be putting on our freedom fighter capes and getting up there and doing what Access of Love has done now for 16 years, which is not just start talking about equity and safe access. We have been doing equity and safe access for over a decade. We're going on 16 years now, presenting to the Board of Supervisors, and even at the state level, we've traveled. We have traveled to the state level and spoken about the exclusion of the patient's voice, the exclusion of people of color, the exclusion of the disabled and the low income in medical cannabis, right? So this has been part of what we have as patients from the experience, being educated, policymakers, law enforcement, our neighbors, our families. We've all been a part of doing this, and unfortunately 9 times out of 10 the elite drug policy community tries to kind of, you know, be spoke pokers, put a spoke into our bicycles, you know, not offer us policy seats. I think that a great example of how we built policy tables is that, you know, when we worked with Supervisor Campos, we had every patient group that we knew of getting a vote, not just Access to Love and hey, we created it and hey, we have this special connection to Supervisor Campos. We didn't go to the table with that attitude. We got to the table and we said, how many more seats can we fill?
We got
and that is very different from what has occurred recently.
How's it going, guys?
Hi, how are you?
So, unfortunately, we have a no smoking policy on the grounds of City Hall.
Okay.
So, if you guys could take it down to the park, just because we have employees here.
We've already smoked and we don't want to go into the sun.
I hear you.
So,
Okay.
that's fine, thank you.
We're already
Much
medicated.
appreciated.
Did you turn the tape off?
We've been meeting here for decades, so.
Okay. Is there a way that you guys could possibly take this picnic somewhere across the street?
You know, it is so hot, and we're all medical cannabis patients.
We always meet here. Person.
Right.
No, just leave it alone.
Gil, just leave it alone. But I think technically, Gil, leave it alone. Leave it alone, Gil. I think we're able legally to sit down right here. I don't think there's a problem with that, and there would be a problem if I took sick patients into the sun. So, sure.
We've lost our freedom. Oh, stop. Just leave it alone. We ain't lost no freedom.
North Koreans won. They won. The North Koreans won.
We've been doing this for 16 years, right? Okay, so let's start here.
I got enough to work with.
You got enough for you? Oh, you going to do your show now?
I like the fact that he's actually.
Are you going to go film your? You can grab for me your fine. All right. You tape it for today? You tape it now first? Are you taking it ready for my show at 5? Oh, okay. See you later. Look, okay. Yes, one love, babe. Look, I'm going up to Laguna and then I gotta go spend South. Okay. Get all paid by the everybody else, they got the hunger for it.
This is not public property?
No, let's show the finish. We can tape it. I'm so sick.
This is public property.
Watch out for this shit.
That's like them telling me they can't sit on the sidewalk. This is bullshit.
That's mine. Oh no, that's mine. That could be my tripod. But we've been doing this for. You got a problem with us too? You have a problem with it?
that just happened. So Access to Love has been meeting by the Lincoln statue for about 10 years now. We're very familiar with the local sheriffs in this area. As a matter of fact, we're great friends with our former sheriff, Ross Mercarimi. But what happened was at first a friendly sheriff came up and he asked us to not smoke because apparently it was going into somebody's office that didn't appreciate it. And we were fine with that. And we were in an area that was shaded. It's a heat wave warning today. And we were sitting on the grass. And then all of a sudden they wanted us to move from there too. And I was saying, no, we don't need to do that. We have freedom of assembly. And I don't really want to take a group of disabled people and have them sit on the cement across from City Hall. Then a sheriff with a sort of covered badge said, can I speak to you alone for a minute? So I got up and I went over there and he's like, I'm asking you to help me. And I'm saying, well, you know, we did help you. We quit, you know, medicating. We've medicated here for several years. What more help do you need? You know, what is actually going on here? And then he asked for my first name, which I'm fine with giving. Then he tried to ask for my last name, and I noticed that his badge was covered. And I said, why is your badge covered? And he said, because a lot of peace officers have been killed. And I'm not going to get into a political discussion with a sheriff about why he has something sort of covering what we should as civilians be able to see, which is his badge number. So to prevent any further harassment, as disabled Americans, we have the right to congregate, we have the right and freedom of assembly. I said, are you asking me to take people and have them sit on cement and without shade, who, you know, have medical conditions and etc.? And he said, oh, there's shade over there. And I'm like, that's cement. As you can clearly see, we are sitting on cement.
Now we can't sit down.
We've got people in wheelchairs. We've got people with canes. You know, this is sort of, and the funny thing is, I was going to talk a little bit about the harassment of the authentic patient community.
Sexual harassment.
To be able to meet and discuss our issues and have a voice in City Hall. So how ironic. By the Lincoln statue, we are moved. And actually, you know, this is just a symptom of what... This is just a symptom of how hard it has been to keep together the patient movement. Our picnics got up to 200 people. Now we are down to 20 because they have systematically tried to dismantle a poor people's voice in medical cannabis for an industry-selected poor people voice in medical cannabis. And that's part of the equity conversation that is inappropriate. It's not equity defined by ruling class selection of whose voice they listen to. Equity is defined by equality and bringing every voice that wants to share an opinion to help move patients' rights forward to the table in an equal manner. And it's such a shame that we have to demand equality in equity. And so what's going on today up here in City Hall is that they are going to be presenting a little bit further information on what was entered by the mayor's office and the supervisor of the Castro area, Sheehy. And it is a 70-page sort of rushed document to look at the permitting process for the recreational and the medical. And what they're saying that they want to do is they want to stop the recreational permits until they have equity permits. And the problem with that, and this happened in East Bay too, where they're defining equity unequally without the voice of the people. So this happened in Oakland too, where a representative of Oakland's equity concerns had to kind of say, hey, your equity isn't making emotional intelligence to the actual community that should have equity in ownership.
Look, they're doing the same thing we did, but they're a fluent white couple, so they get away with it.
Okay. So part of the problem of what's happened, if you noticed, is the only time people found out that the mayor was going to enter something was Tuesday morning from the news. There was no calling up past advocates saying, hey, we're thinking of entering something. What do you think of this? Myself, Greg, Denise, other people have served on city bodies as patient advocates. We weren't pulled to any table. We weren't alerted that the mayor was going to drop some legislation in. If you looked on the agenda Tuesday, it did not say cannabis anywhere on it. And these are tricks of politics that we've seen over and over again, this sort of sneaking something through the agenda. So if you're legislating, if you're trained to track legislation and you type in cannabis, nothing comes up.
Yeah, just like the insurance on 215.
Right. So, I mean, it's very interesting little trick, right? And it's interesting because what they proposed so far for equity is so ill-defined. And we've been on the phone, or I've been on the phone for Access to Love all yesterday, setting up appointments so that we can help the supervisors that we've worked with for over, decades. We've known these people. So we can help the progressive supervisors define equity in a way that's fair, that supports every low income, not just Access to Love, not just the Rosaria Kenyon Collective, not just this or that collective that has been serving patients free medical cannabis. Every single group needs to remain on the map. If it's not broken, don't fix it. If one patient is getting value out of the small collective that they belong to and it's saving their life and it's helping them abate addictions and it's caring for their pain, there's no reason a group of elite, mostly white men from the Castro can come down and tell us how we should do low-income access. That is so pissed down policy, it's unbelievable. So today, the planning department is going to go over further of the plans. Now, a lot of the plans are going to be kind of boring stuff to sit through because it's going to be the map. And what's the map going to look like? And one thing Access to Love and even the whole prior task force agrees upon, and just basically everybody agrees on in the San Francisco community, is that we need the 1,000 feet to go down to 600 feet, right? Like the state law. So we all agree upon that. And that's a lot of the political struggle will be like, where can people actually locate, a new club or what have you. But our struggle is going to be making sure that the clubs that were unfairly taken off the map in the last round of federal crackdown get priority. That's equity to us. Our equity involves Divinity Tree, Sanctuary, HopeNet, Act Up, Act Up, Act Up, right? Because patients' rights are definitely under attack, and what do? We act up and we fight back. We haven't forgotten Act Up. We need our cultural community centers back on the map. We preach coexistence. They preach corporate takeover. Huge difference. But we're not going to become them. We're not going to say, hey, you have no place on the map. We're going to say we have a right to exist. And it's pathetic that we have to say we have a right to exist. And today will be the first sort of informational hearing on this. and it'll be on government TV, so we can all go review it and talk about it before the next hearing, right? And the next hearing, I'm hoping that we'll have our speaker corps ready to talk, and we'll be ready to talk about what we've been working on for decades, you know, with securing safe access for low-income patients. But what you'll see today is a lot of the affluent lobbyists up there talking about basically taking ownership over equity, which is just so reverse. Yeah, it is. It's fucking bullshit. It's the reverse of what should be happening. If you're talking about equity, right. If you're talking about equity in an elitist, select manner instead of in an inclusive manner, you've already missed the boat. And it was really sad that we were forced to move. That's never happened to us before. We've never had the sheriffs come up behind us. I'm not sure what that sheriff was talking about as far as officers have been downed, and that's why he had his bad. I don't know of any officer or sheriff being hurt in San Francisco recently by anybody. And certainly not by a group of pacifists smoking a joint in the shade.
You know what? That's what I did.
Federal guys, federal cops.
I know. I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna agree with him. I think the young Asian man that was talking to us was local, and I think the other guy was probably something else. But it's really interesting. Right? It's really interesting that occurred, you know, and it's not going to stop me from asking anybody who cares to, and it's the one moment we'll go into the sun, because I'm damned if I'm going to take a knee on some cement because a sheriff moved me over here with a covered badge.
Did you mention something about they're trying to stop that medical marijuana if they're making it legal?
No, they're not stopping medical marijuana. What they're doing is they're putting a halt on the permits for the recreational, the adult use, until they have the equity problem solved.
Oh, yeah, that's why it's
right?
not on the shelf.
So the 11th hour, all of a sudden they've noticed that there's poor people standing around. And seriously, what is it now? 27 years later, they're like, maybe we should do something about equity. When we've been talking about it since Access to Love was created, that's why Access to Love was created, to be very clear, is because we didn't want to continue to work with Americans for Safe Access, because it became clear to me that they were becoming a lobbyist firm who catered to paying clients, you know, which is fine. So then call yourself a lobbying firm. Don't call yourself a patient advocacy organization. Because lobbying firms exist in every single kind of trade. They're always going to be there, you know, and that's not what we're opposed to. What we're opposed to is people using us as a front for what's actually a business enterprise. So today is going to be a really hot day. Like I'm saying, nobody is recording.